Executive producer Richard Donner originally intended to direct the movie himself, but as production languished, he moved on to Lethal Weapon. Richard Franklin was going to direct, but had a fallout with Donner. Then Mary Lambert was set to direct, but was fired due to creative differences between her and producer Richard Donner. Richard Donner's wife, producer Lauren Schuler Donner, convinced Donner to hire Joel Schumacher for directing duties. The original screenplay was originally about a bunch of Goonie-type 5th, 6th grade kid vampires, with the Frog Brothers being chubby 8-year-old Cub Scouts, and Star being a boy instead of a love interest. The original inspiration came upon the notion that Peter Pan could fly, visit Wendy, and her brothers at night, and never grow old. The simple notion that Peter Pan was a vampire was the genesis for the story. In the first draft of the script, the character of David was originally named Peter, and other characters also had names from the Peter Pan story. In the final draft, many name changes were made, but originally the two brothers were Michael and John, which was later changed to Sam, and the mother's name was Wendy. The most obvious nod to the Pan story is the dog Nanook. And the grandfather character was never in the original story. Joel Schumacher hated that idea and told the producers he would only sign on if he could change them to teenagers, as he thought it would be much sexier and more interesting. Originally, the script called for Santa Cruz to be the name of the fictional town where the Lost Boys hunted their prey, but the Santa Cruz City Council strongly objected to the town being portrayed as the murder capital of the world, and refused to grant filming permits unless the production company changed the scripted city name. Santa Carla replaced Santa Cruz in the film. It took a couple weeks to convince 18-year-old actor at the time Jason Patric to accept the role as Michael. Corey Haim was cast as Sam. Brooke McCarter was cast as Paul. Corey Haim and Brooke McCarter got on so well during filming that McCarter became Haim's manager in the early 90s. Jim Carrey was considered for the role of David. He previously portrayed a vampire in the film Once Bitten. Kiefer Sutherland would go on to play David. Sutherland was originally reluctant to star in the film until he heard that Joel Schumacher had lined up INXS and Jimmy Barnes to be on the soundtrack. Corey Feldman was cast as Edgar Frog. This was Corey Haim and Corey Feldman's first film together, which marked the start of the popular 80s trend The Two Coreys, in which Corey Feldman and Corey Haim starred together in a number of teenage films. Jameson Newlander was cast as Alan Frog in his film debut. Fred Gwynne was considered for the part of Max, but Edward Herrmann was cast as Max. Jamie Gertz was actually recommended by Jason Patric. Joel Schumacher was originally looking for a blonde. Keenan Wynn and John Carradine were both original choices for Grandpa. Wynn died right before filming and Carradine was too ill. Bernard Hughes was cast as Grandpa, and Diane Weiss was cast as Lucy. Alex Winter was cast as Marco, and Billy Wirth as Dwayne. Gerard McMahon wrote the theme song Cry Little Sister to the movie after only reading the script and without ever seeing a frame of the film. The movie didn't originally end on a joke. After the scene with Grandpa at the refrigerator, it was supposed to cut to the surviving Lost Boys regrouping in the sunken hotel. The last shot was of a mural on the wall made in the early 1900s, with Max in it looking exactly the same as he did today. All of this appeared in an early draft of the script, but ultimately was never filmed. David is impaled on a pair of antlers and doesn't disintegrate like the other vampires. Despite what Max later says, he is not really dead. This was intended to be picked up in the sequel, The Lost Girls, which was scripted but never made. The Lost Boys was filmed in Santa Cruz, California in only 3 weeks. The Lost Boys opened at number 2 on July 31st, 1987 during its opening weekend, with a gross of over $5 million. It went on to gross over $32 million against an $8.2 million budget. Its tagline was, "Sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die, it's fun to be a vampire." The film was also a hit when it was released on VHS, accruing more than $14 million in rentals and gaining a broad audience from airings on networks like HBO and Showtime throughout the 90s. In 1988, Corey Feldman won a Young Artist Award for Best Young Actor in a Horror Motion Picture, and The Lost Boys won a Saturn Award for Best Horror Film in 1988 as well. The Lost Boys was released on VHS on February 24th, 1988, and on DVD on January 28th, 1998, and on Blu-ray on July 29th, 2008. I hope you've enjoyed this brief history on the Lost Boys, and I thank you for watching.